Brother Sean sent this drawing to us. That this was a drawing that Yah gave him when he drew it up. And when he presented the calendar that he understood to us, I found this picture just so intriguing. And so I'd like to bring your attention to the top of the menorah here. And so we have 7 branches, where the middle one is number 4. And we see this like bright yellow straight line that goes right up to number 4 in the middle. And so this is the understanding that we all are in agreement on, that the straight line shadow makes is the sign for the 4th day of creation week. And so what perplexed me, though, was that if you look in the middle here at these numbers, 6 is really bolded, but it's just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have these little boxes with the spaces in between the branches. But what was so perplexing to me was that this yellow straight line went between gates 3 and 4. And so oftentimes when people only consider the solar cycle, they are believing that the equinox is day 0 and thus beginning their year the day after. But my question was, how can both of these coincide? How can they coexist together, where the equinox is day 0 or is between the 3rd and the 4th gate, and yet also is the 4th day of creation week? And so I just like to read to you guys Enoch 72:5. And the chariot on which he ascends, the wind drives, and the sun goes down from the heaven and returns through the north in order to reach the east, and is so guided that he comes to the appropriate portal and shines in the face of the heaven. Now, whenever we read this particular verse, we understand that this is a day in and of itself, where the sun is returning through the north and shining in the face of the heaven. And so we can extrapolate that this is day 0, because Enoch goes on to count 30, 30, 31, 30, 30, 31, and he counts 364 days. And it has to be a day 0 because we're told it's 364 days of the year. So 0 doesn't have a numerical value, but it does have a place in the counting of days. And so I'm sure you're thinking at this point, like, but Marissa, that's not the day 0 that we've all been understanding. Well, family, it is day 0 of the solar cycle. And so, Jeremy, if you could you go to the next picture, please? So there are 2 counts. And the very first count I have here is creation week, that gives us the Sabbath day. And so when we recognize day 0 on creation week, which is 316, it moves the equinox into that place of day 4 of the week. And this is the only way that those 2 counts can coincide and be true at the same time. So you'll see in the second section, solar cycle and the seasons. If we don't have the solar cycle in this position, then our seasons will become dislodged. Where if we read Enoch 72 and we think that we should be beginning with the equinox specifically, well, then Enoch 72's seasonal days, the quarter division leaders, will be dislodged. But this is a separate cycle. Enoch was given the cycles of the luminaries. And so he's describing to us the solar cycle. Now, creation week and the Sabbath day, the references that we can make really come from Jubilees, where in Jubilees we're told to count 52 weeks of days. And so there are actually 3 wheels going on here. So we see the first wheel, the most outer wheel. Jeremy, you can pan to the next picture. The most outer wheel is creation week. And so creation week begins with Genesis 1 through 2, when the earth was formless and void and darkness was upon the face of the deep. That is our divider day. And so that lands on 3/16, and it's after the 52nd Sabbath of the year. So we are counting 52 weeks of days from creation week. And there are multiple scriptures written in Jubilees where it says from the beginning of creation, from the time of creation, giving credence to this creation week and the count of it being important. And so when we recognize that there's 2 different wheels going on, we see that middle wheel is the solar cycle that began on the 4th day when the sun, the moon, and the stars were made. And so that is that straight line day, the 4th day of creation week. What's really interesting, though, is that we also know of the prophetic year spoken of in Daniel is 360 days, and those days are counted between the equinox and the equilux. So that is 321 to 315. That gives us 360 days for our prophetic year. And now I wholeheartedly understand where our brothers and sisters in Messiah choose to reckon their days by the solar cycle. However, I'd like to implore you to consider this. The scripture where in Ezekiel 8, where the priests have their backs to the temple and they're facing the east, bowing to the sun. They're worshiping the sun as a luminary. And these are what our lunar calendar brothers and sisters are also doing, except with the moon. And they worship the moon on the new moon days, and they blow the shofar at the moon, and they're looking at her and honoring her in that way. And so when we recognize, though, that there are multiple cycles that are overlaid here for the calendar, and when we recognize that creation week comes first, we are no longer going to reckon our days by honoring the creation, but rather we'll be honoring the Creator and all that He did.